Hello again. Welcome to another edition of Media Watch. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony.
And I'm their friend and guest, Alan Singer.
Educator-Historian Dr. Alan Singer, a regular on Media Watch most of the time these days, happy to say, because we can always use his expertise. Raymond Peterson's not with us. He's not been up to par health-wise and other engagement. So hopefully we'll be seeing him soon. This is being brought to you by the good graces of EVT Educational Productions, Zoom, and theoretically Manhattan Neighborhood Network if they have their stuff up and running in their new location. We'll see. We're doing it the Wednesday before our Monday, usual supposed Monday airing. And when this airs, it'll be the day after Christmas, if I remember correctly. And I believe the beginning of Kwanzaa. So let's just wish everybody happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, and happy Kwanzaa. And of course, for those who are celebrating the winter solstice, join our entire celebration.
Today is the winter solstice day.
There we go. We're taping on the winter solstice. That's why we included the winter solstice folk. And guess what? We're all winter solstice because all the Christians did was co-opt the pagan winter solstice celebration and called it Christmas.
It's also quite cold out there today.
Hey, it's going to be colder next week when it airs.
They said in the Midwest and the South is being threatened by what they call the bomb cyclone.
Yeah.
That is so cold and windy, it's threatening to knock out electricity and heat.
Well, it's starting to get cold for a bunch of other people too. And that segue, we're going to start off with what people will still be hemming and hawing about and harumping about and talking about, rejoicing about, but the January 6th committee, as we all know by now, actually referred to the Department of Justice criminal charges against the former occupant of the White House, one Donald J. Trump. And I believe they also included the lawyer who cooked up the false scheme for false electors, John Eastman. And there was one other person that was on that referral list, escapes my mind right now. You guys can chime in if you remember. But and others was the actual phrase that it seemed to roll with significance off the chairman Benny Thompson's tongue when he says and others for possible criminal charges, for criminal prosecution. Alan, you can jump in on whether or not that has any significance, whether DOJ can, could, will, might. Either one of you guys can jump in. My gut feeling is they probably will, but they might hem and haw before they do it. Go on.
Bob, why don't you start?
Well, first of all, I'm quite happy that this has come to pass at all, because you remember how long it took for these hearings just to get started, how many months and years before any real panel was impaneled to deal with this. So the fact that we have referrals coming out of it is a great thing, and what the DOJ will do with it, it's dangerous ground to tread, because we know what the extreme right, there are dangerous people on the extreme right, and we have to worry about those should there be an actual charge against the former president. So that clearly has to come into the thought process of Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice to figure out what the hell to do right now after these referrals have been made.
I mean, it's a very dangerous time for democracy in the United States, and we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't. If he's not indicted, if he's not charged, well, that says that the president is above the law. The president can break any laws that he wants or she wants. Now, the Constitution is written with the idea that the impeachment process would address this, but we're at a highly polarized, politically partisan time where the impeachment process can't possibly work. The courts were not really intended to prosecute former presidents. And it's very, very scary, because what you're going to have, I fully anticipate the new Republican majority in the House is going to have a string of lunatic investigations charging Biden and everybody else with impeachable crimes. And it's going to stalemate the United States government. It's going to lead to greater people saying, how can we solve anything? But the other thing, and that I find very scary, is, let's say Trump is indicted. He's going to run for president, and he's going to use that as a platform to argue that he and his people are being victimized. And he's going to do it one way or the other. So I just don't see any hopefulness here. I'm just very frightened for democracy in the United States. I have no question he's guilty of these things, based on the hearings. They charged him with 4 different counts. Well, they recommended it: obstruction of an official proceeding, attempting to block the electoral vote, conspiracy to defraud the United States by arguing that a legitimate election was not, a conspiracy to make a false statement, and efforts to incite, assist, or aid or comfort an insurrection. I mean, these are very serious charges. I from those hearings, I have no question that he's guilty of these things. I just worry about the future of the country.
I agree with you, Alan. The danger of the blowback investigations once the Republicans take over the House next year, after January 1st, that's when they get sworn in, and yeah, we're at a sad time in American political, in the American practice of democracy, for whatever the hell that means right now. So yes, I worry about what's going to happen should we get a charge out of this.
So I've got all kinds of dust or something all over my screen, and I'm looking very faded or whatever, and I wiped it a couple of times. I don't know what's going on, but
what's essential, Eric, is the content, not the view.
Okay, we'll continue anyway. But here you about these bogus investigations, whether they start or don't start. What bothers me when you talk about the threat to our democracy is when Chairman Benny Thompson of that committee said, and others, and he strongly recommended the and others be looked into seriously by the Justice Department. Among the people named as part of the and others, before the and others, there were additional names like Mark Meadows and is it John Eastman? And Jim Jordan, the representative from, I believe, Ohio. Well, Jim Jordan is the guy who is going to be, according to all the stuff we've seen in the press, going to be chairing the House Judiciary Committee when the Republicans take control of the House come January 1st. And so my question is, the and others, those were recommendations for possible prosecution or sanctions because they failed to abide by subpoenas. There were 142 Republicans, 8 senators, and 139 House members who voted not to certify Joe Biden's election. That's 142 members elected in our body who basically were aiding and abetting the false electoral scam. So they were giving aid and comfort to an insurrectionist plot. So for my money, the Department of Justice needs to be following that line of investigation of how many of those people actually were complicit in aiding and abetting this attempted insurrection.
Agreed, but we're talking here again, we're walking on a minefield. We can guess at what the blowback will be if so many people were to be investigated. I agree, Eric. Legal election, accurately counted, honestly won. Each state certified their electors, sent those electors to the ceremony, January 26th ceremony, and these Republicans said, oh, well, we're not going to accept them. Egregious in what they did. And yes, they're complicit in this, but it's a minefield if you want to go after them.
Well, one judge somewhere out in the hinterlands actually told a candidate for elected office he could not run because he was unfit as an insurrectionist based on the 14th Amendment. So if a local federal judge or a local state judge can call on the 14th Amendment and enforce it and say, no, you're off this ballot, you can't run, and nobody challenged that, then I'm thinking we should be going down that road nationally, because the fact that these people aided and abetted an insurrection is just not acceptable to me. But
agreed, Eric. And you'll be happy to know that you're looking a lot better now. Whatever fuzzing in your video has cleared up.
Oh, good.
The problem is we have to distinguish between bad behavior and illegal action and moral, ethical dilemmas. They said that Kevin McCarthy and Jordan, Perry, and Briggs should be investigated for ethical behavior by the House, but that's not criminal. Jeffrey Clark, Rudy Giuliani, and Mark Meadows, they're being recommended for criminal action. But the people who voted not to accept the results of the election, they claimed they were voting because they wanted further investigation. They didn't claim they were rejecting the election. They claimed that they were they needed to have more data. Now, I think it's a load of crap. I think it was political. I think it was obstruction, but it's not. I don't think it rises to the level of criminal behavior, and that's part of the problem.
You're probably going down the road that the Justice Department would go down.
Yeah,
I'm going down the road that all that stuff had been adjudicated in 56 plus lawsuits, okay? And they lost, except for one minor technicality on one particular case, and it had absolutely nothing to do with the validity of the case. It was just a technicality. So all that stuff had already been adjudicated in the legal justice system of this country. So to then go against that and claim they wanted further clarification, that's a crock of BS. And so I'm saying the reason why they won't do it is because they don't want to explode that minefield, but they have legal grounds to go after those people. They just don't want to open up that bucket of worms, as you say. But bucket of worms, craziness, your boy, former New York resident, now Mar-a-Lago occupant, didn't fare too well in those referrals. He also didn't do too well in other legal. But what else was his bad report card, Alan?
Oh, well, he's having a cold winter, Eric. It turns out that in 2020, as president, he paid no taxes, and for some reason, the Treasury Department failed to audit him. Now, I need to find out how that works, because I don't mind not being audited myself. But the Trump Organization was convicted by a jury in New York City of multiple crimes, including fraud, and the Manhattan District Attorney's Office is now investigating Trump's role in a hush money payment to a porn star, Stormy Daniels. It looks like a really stormy winter for the Donald.
Speaking of failure to investigate or audit or whatever, because this is a guy who claimed he made gazillion dollars and then claimed he lost a gazillion dollars, and so that's why he didn't have to pay taxes. So I would definitely want to be auditing that. But didn't we just get somebody new into the failure to be well investigated, Bob? What was something you sent me on one of those social media platforms. Who's this guy and what's his
Well,
claim to fame?
well, I mean, the New York Times dropped a bombshell this week, and fairly well researched one at that, on Long Island, the newly elected, well, the newly elected Long Island Congressman George Santos. He takes his seat January 1st like everyone else, but it turned out that his resume, as the Times put it, was basically a work of fiction.
Mm-hmm.
When you go through it, it says that he said that he went to NYU and to Baruch. He went to neither. He said he worked for J.P. Morgan and Goldman Sachs. He worked at neither. Apparently, his company does not have any public-facing assets that anybody can see. It turns out that he, I guess, lifted a checkbook in Brazil and ran away from the legal process. Basically, I mean, we've had other politicians where there were defects in their resume, but this guy is basically a defect with a resume somehow hidden within it. It's just astounding that, and the bottom question is, who the hell is this guy? He says in one of his, he said that he had what, $750,000 worth of income from his company,
Right,
and the company that we can't find.
Mm-hmm.
So now the big question is, who the hell is he? Where did that money come from? And should this guy be in Congress? Clearly, this is a huge, gigantic question mark.
But there's problem is there's really no way to exclude him. He was elected fair and square. He's not the first person to lie and enhance a resume, though it may be towards the extreme. One of the things that concerns me is I don't know why the Times did not release this before the election. You know, we're Media Watch, and I think the New York media let us down. They should have been exploring who he was and letting the voters know. But under the last Supreme Court case, I believe it was about Adam Clayton Powell, and what the Supreme Court ruled is if you were elected and you meet the qualifications, you cannot be removed from the House of Representatives. You could be censured. They could take away your committee assignments like they do with Marjorie Taylor Greene, but they can't refuse to seat you. He's going to be congressman from New York, from Queens and Nassau County for the next 2 years. So he could continue to serve if he was in jail.
Yeah. So my question is, you can be convicted, never mind just accused, because I think Adam Clayton Powell was just accused, wasn't tried, wasn't convicted. And the House stripped him of his seat, and so the Supreme Court said, no, that's no grounds for that. You have to seat him. And by the way, he actually ran and was elected, even though the Supreme Court then ruled in his favor. He wasn't supposed to have been stripped, but he thumbed his nose at the Congress twice because his constituency reelected him anyway. And just in passing, folks, he passed more legislation than any other congressman in the history of the Congress. I'm almost 99% sure of that statement. Adam Clayton Powell Jr., more legislation came through his office, through that House when he was in office than any other elected legislator in the history of the Congress. If I'm wrong, somebody can send me an update. But the last time I checked, I believe he was still number one. But the fact that this guy got by without being vetted properly, his opponent should have blown the whistle harder. He said he did, but he didn't blow that whistle hard enough. I don't want to just kick the New York Times because guess what? Nobody else vetted this guy properly. So you're right, Alan. It wasn't just the New York Times. The total New York media dropped the ball on finding out who this guy was. Because if the Goldman Sachs was a lie, the NYU was a lie, the Baruch was a lie, the J.P. Morgan was a lie, was there anything truthful about the fact that, oh, Did he really live in Queens/Nassau County? Did they check his, because he got evicted for non-payment of rent a couple of years before he ran for office, correct?
Yes.
Correct. And
okay, which brings me to the question of, if you're bounced for non-payment of rent 2 years before you run, because he ran the previous election cycle and got soundly trounced, and he came back and ran again, and he loaned his campaign $700,000. So if you couldn't pay rent, how did you get $700,000 as salary from a company that we can't, a real estate company that we can't find any records for in the state or city of New York? And it's supposed to be, oh no, he says, oh, it's a Florida-based company. But they can't find any records for that company either. Where is this $700,000 that he loaned his campaign coming from?
I've complained about this in different circles, press release journalism, where you basically take what people say, you take the handouts and you write them up, and you don't do any further investigation. I complained about that with my tech coverage. You just take what Microsoft gives you. No, you go beyond that. Mm-hmm. And it seems like that happened during the entire campaign, because we took what he said. Yeah. He said he was a real estate and Wall Street banker and whatnot. Media just took it. So we have to sort of take a hit on that. Should have been better.
Big hit, definitely big hit. Once that thing hit the fan, it was like, how the hell could this have happened? All this bad baggage, all these lies, and not one media outlet blew the whistle or challenged it. So I don't know. Yeah. But anyway, speaking of which, within the context of not being truthful, before we leave politics, what does that say? Is this guy the poster child for the incoming GOP Congress? I mean,
a lot of competition for that. I mean, you still got Marjorie Taylor Greene and that Bogert from Colorado and your friend Jim Jordan from Ohio, I guess. A lot of competition for the poster child for a lunatic House of Representatives.
Wow.
I mean, Herschel Walker would have won it for the Senate had he won. Whoa. But yeah, for the House, we have lots of competition.
Oh boy, are we? So we got a whole bunch of insurrectionists, aiders, and abettors in the GOP. We got a bunch of, I don't want to say a bunch. We have a known criminal record new person coming in, and we've been told that this incoming House is going to be launching a ton of investigations into Hunter Biden's laptop, into Joe Biden's presidency and whether he should be impeached. Marjorie Taylor Greene has already said she plans to file impeachment proceedings. She said that more than once against Joseph Robinette Biden, our current occupant of the White House. So I'm asking you guys, how much of this stuff are we going to have to put up with before some of the Justice Department investigations might put a break to the craziness? If there's going to be a Justice Department investigation. You already told me no, but one more time.
I just anticipate that the volume of the craziness will just keep accelerating as we get to the 2024 election. I don't think these people are going to moderate their behavior. And to be honest, there are things that should be investigated. The war in Ukraine has been a bonanza for U.S. weapons manufacturers. The United States must spend almost $1 trillion a year on the Defense Department. And Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, they're cleaning up. You know, the United States is not giving money to Ukraine, it's giving weapons, and then it's paying American companies to replace them. That's something that should be investigated. I'm also very worried if we give Patriot missiles to Ukraine, isn't that an escalation of the NATO conflict with Russia? And where is that going to end?
Well, Alan, I'm speaking now as an ex-military individual.
Okay.
Full disclaimer. When you get, and I take this all the way back from military historian type things, when you get somebody like Putin who decides he's going to ignore borders, if you don't stop him at the point where he thinks he's going to win, he will continue. And so we give Israel billions of dollars in foreign aid. Israel doesn't need a dime in foreign aid from the United States. The money they're giving to Israel, they should be given to Ukraine to stop Putin. Now, the Israeli lobbyists will come down and beat my head to the pulp for saying something like that. But the point of the matter is, if we do not stand for a democracy that's under attack, and we're giving foreign aid to all kinds of other countries that don't need it, then we're actually shooting ourselves in the foot. That's going to come back to hurt us even worse. Okay. So that's my take on that.
And we have about a minute and a half left. And I know we wanted to hit upon one more thing.
Yeah, we got to segue off of the exonerated 5. Let's go out real quick and real fast on those 5 young men who were wrongly accused, spent time in jail. You want to pop up that particular headline, and then we'll close with the exonerated gate. But Yusuf Salam, Santana Jr., Rory McCrae, I can't remember the other 2. But
yeah, they were the poster kids for, you know, the problem of crime in New York City. They were just vilified, smeared, hated. The former president said they should, you know, Trump said they should be executed.
Right.
So, you know, and now we're back honoring them as we should.
The headline that they vilified, and the rest of the press was just as bad as the Daily News. Let's go to the positive shot when they were exonerated and they unveiled the gate, if we can, because we're about out of time. And I just want to pay tribute to those young men because they suffered, and the media and Donald Trump played a major role in the tarnishing, wrecking of their reputations and their lives.
And scaring the New York public out of their minds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Since the whole public was a victim of media failure here.
So we can't get that last folk. Can we get it?
We got it.
Okay. Pop it up. There we go.
And with that, we're just about out.
Okay, folks. This has been Media Watch. Thanks for joining us. I'm your co-host, Eric Tait.
I'm Bob Anthony. As you can see, that's the opening of the gate of the exonerated. Happy to see that.
And I'm their friend and guest, Alan Singer. I wish everybody a safe and healthy Christmas and New Year.
And we'll catch you the next time, folks.